ইসলাম প্রতিবেদনে আজ চলে আসছে আপনাদের সামনে সরাসরি চোখ টিভিতে। যেখান থেকে দেখছেন দেশ ও দেশের বাইরে টিভি সেটে, মোবাইলে এবং ল্যাপটপে, ইউটিউবে যারা চোখ টিভি দেখছেন সবাইকে যারা সাদর আমন্ত্রণ, শুভেচ্ছা। প্রিয় দর্শক, 2024 জুলাইয়ে যে গণহত্যা আন্দোলন ও ফ্যাসিস্টদের নিয়ে যে সমন্বয় গঠিত হয়েছে সেটিগুলো নিয়ে ঢাকা ইউনিভার্সিটির সিনেট ভবনে বিভিন্ন শিক্ষক শিক্ষিকা এবং রাজনীতিবিদ যারা আছেন তারা এসে আজকে সেই জুলাইকে স্মরণ করে আজকে সেই সভা অনুষ্ঠিত হচ্ছে।
Assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome to the third plenary session for today's conference. We would like to commence this session by calling on stage our special guest, Professor A. Jahangir Alam, Treasurer of University of Dhaka, who is also a professor at the Department of Finance at University of Dhaka.
Honorable Pro-Vice Chancellor, Administration, University of Dhaka, Professor Saima Abidisha, Honorable Deputy President, PKR, and Executive Chairperson Polity, Malaysia, Ms. Nur Isa Anwar, brothers and sisters, and other guests, students, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. We are celebrating July 2024 revolution. I was one of the protesters and participants of this revolution from the beginning to the very end. And I went to Shahaba actually to express my solidarity to the disturbance on the 2nd day of July. And from then to the end, I was part of them and I was with them in the faith. So whenever I go somewhere, I ask what were the reasons that motivated me to join this July revolution. I give two reasons. The first reason is that I had a fear that my beloved country might lose its sovereignty someday. The reasons that motivated me to have that fear were like we were having treaties with some neighboring country which went against the interests of Bangladesh. And the border against the way we were actually giving our infrastructure to that country without almost free of cost. And all of these activities actually went against the interests of our country. So I thought that this country might lose its sovereignty someday in the future. That fear was indeed. Second fear is that even if we had survived sovereignty on papers, we might be a failing state or a failed state someday. Why? I'm sure all of you are actually familiar with the famous book titled Why Nations Fail, written by two famous professors, Professor Darren Asimoglu and James A. Robinson. So one from Harvard University and another one from Chicago University. They have mentioned that what are the reasons that walk behind making a state fail. And all of the reasons that they mentioned in the book were actually were visible in Bangladesh. They started actually making comparison between two cities, on each side of a border, American-Mexican border. And names of these two cities are Nogales, Arizona and Nogales, Sonora. Nogales, Arizona in the United States, Nogales, Sonora in Mexico. So by making comparison between these cities, they have identified that the institutions that actually require to make a state, a nation successful And those institutions were not actually working in Mexico, and whereas the same institutions were fully working in the United States. And because of this reason, the quality of lives between these these cities were actually huge. The quality of life of the people living in Mexico and the quality of life of the people living in the United States. So the institutions that are required to make a state successful, and those institutions were systematically damaged or destroyed by the fascist regime in the last 15 years. So I have this fear that my country might be a failed state in the future. So these two reasons actually. One is that we might be losing our sovereignty, and we might be a failed state in the future. These two reasons actually motivated me to join this July revolution. So now question is that after having this July revolution and then having a new Bangladesh that we are calling, how can we actually achieve our target of becoming a successful, a prosperous nation in the future? Okay. So I have identified 7 things that are important to make sure that this country doesn't fail, become a prosperous country in the future. The first one is that we must rebuild our institutions. Institutions like law enforcement agencies, our judiciary, our bureaucracy, our election commission, our anti-corruption commission, our education system, our health system. These institutions need to be rebuilt, need to be make sure that these institutions work for the people, not only for a few individuals, a portion of the society in the country. We must free our institutions from political control. We know that heavily our institutions are influenced by the political parties, and this needs to be ensured that these institutions are free from political interference. We must protect our rights of every citizen. The human rights and other rights should be protected of all the individuals in this country. And it needs to be shared that this country is free from gender discrimination, is free from religious discrimination, is free from all sorts of discrimination. We must appoint people based on merit. The whole July revolution actually started from a protest against quota-based appointment system in the country. So under the quota system, some of the majority of the people are actually coming from the quota, and the whole thing, competition was actually compromised. Less qualified people were getting appointment when the qualified people were denied the same jobs. It needs to be ensured that only qualified people are appointed and get employment. We must ensure that our elections are free and fair. In the last 15 years, we couldn't be able to, vote. We were not be able to elect our people whom we wanted to see in power. We were not given this opportunity, or we were not given this right. So we need to make sure that our elections are free and fair. We must fight corruption at every level. The corruption is huge. We know that. And due to corruption, the whole financial system actually collapsed in the country. And we have to actually rebuild our institution, and to rebuild this thing, to rebuild our institution, we make sure that our institution is free from corruption. We must include people in the decision making. In the process of decision making, still in the country, our people, are not, involved, are not getting involved in the decision-making process. If you look at the parliament, we saw that the majority of people who got elected in the parliament were not the representative of the majority of the people. These people are coming from the elite class and business community. So they protected their interests. They didn't protect the interests of all the majority of the people in this country. So we you need to make sure that through electing proper individuals to the parliament, we have to make sure that the people get the opportunities to participate in the decision-making process. So the point is that at the end of the day, what I would like to say that to have a discrimination-free and inclusive Bangladesh, we have to make sure that our institutions work, and we have to take all the necessary reforms to make sure that these institutions work and the institutions survive. So I hope that we will be able to achieve the points that I have on education, and we will see that our institutions work in this country. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this conference. Thank you.
We sincerely appreciate your valuable insights. It's now our time, and I have the honour to welcome our special guest, Malaysia. She's the Deputy President of the PKR Party in Malaysia. She currently serves as an Executive Chairperson of Party from 2023 to 2024. She co-chaired the Secretariat of Finance and Advisory Panel at the Ministry of Finance, leading the research on revenue, debt, reform, government.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you very much, pengurusi majlis. I know some of you speak Bahasa, so you know when I say pengurusi, it means DMC. I would really like to thank all the Pro-Vice Chancellors, the Vice Chancellors, distinguished scholars, respected dignitaries, not just from Malaysia, but also actually from the Art Party, Yasin, as well as from the Chief Advisor's Office, and University of Dhaka, because all of you here, I think it's okay to call you my fellow comrades in solidarity and struggle. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam perjuangan, salam hormat. And I love that just now the word sovereignty was mentioned, because we in the global south must reaffirm our sovereign right to craft our destiny, inshallah. So it's a honor to receive this invitation. I'm Deputy President of the party, so I had to cancel a few meetings with the President, and I said I'm very sorry, but today we choose Bangladesh because we want to celebrate the pivotal first national conference on the July Revolution. So it is such a historic moment. For every one person present, you have to make sure I agree today that this campus, not just I think the oldest here, older than many campuses, sweat and ideals of freedom, has once again emerged as a symbol of conscience and as well as renewed hope. Tagore once said, "He who builds walls creates exclusion, for others build walls across his own freedom. Distrust freedom in others loses his moral right to it." And for every he, there is a she. Because we are in this together.
প্রিয় দর্শক যারা দেখছেন অবশ্যই সাবস্ক্রাইব করবেন, লাইক দিবেন, কমেন্টস দিবেন। আজকে জুলাইয়ের ফার্স্ট কনভেনশন, ইন্টারন্যাশনাল কনভেনশন।
I also speak to you as a fellow proud Asian, your Malaysian comrade, political activist, and on behalf of Malaysia's People's Justice Party. And I speak to you also in sadness, yet defiant and unshaken in recalling and harnessing the courage of your youth, the sufferings endured in voicing their longing for dignity, justice, and how today is part and parcel in living and building up to a nation's renewed promise. And unfortunately, the hard work begins. Comrades, we're also meeting at the back of so much global suffering, the enabling of the ongoing genocidal onslaught in Gaza by the hegemons,
and their ilk remind us of the need. We need to strengthen solidarity and reaffirm our moral positioning and autonomy. Our thoughts also turn to the families affected by the tragedy. So indeed, friends and comrades, we do live in trying, but instead of despair, it should embolden our collective resolve to chart a path forward in true sovereignty and solidarity. Students worldwide are often dismissed as apathetic, yet history reveals moral vanguard. A people's awakening in history of July teaches us that revolutions are never born in isolation. Cut down on dissent, silencing of student leaders, manipulation of trust in every institution that was meant to serve the people. So I really want to thank the University of Dhaka for shedding further light into the seeds of the revolution. And inshallah, from the wonderful series of speakers, we get a sense of what is needed to move forward. Now, while each movement is unique in its own right, Malaysia had its own 1974 Baling protests, where student leaders, including Malaysia's current Prime Minister, led the movement starvation due to extreme poverty. A lot of them were detained for 22 measures. You get the focus in rural development. So it's all about making sure there's balance. We're not just focused on the cities, right? Which is the focal point of the studies that Asamoglu in Why Nations Fail. But you can look into, it will take a different formula, a different set of priorities and development plan if you want to focus on the rural components of the birth of the nation spirit, the rupture in the architecture of fear. Any regime, no matter how powerful, cannot stand against the will of an awakened people. So if I may, I want to share some of the suggestions based on our own humble experience. And remember, every nation will continue to go through its set of challenges. That's why the younger generation, the Gen Alphas, the Gen Zs here, it's really incumbent on you because it's going to be your future. It's going to be something that you have to embark on and you have to take up. And for me, some of the key steps moving forward should include economy empowerment. I wanted to draw attention to the lessons between Malaysia's Amanah Ikhtiar Malaysia, which is a microcredit program, and Grameen. Why? So, Amanah Ikhtiar, which is Malaysia's largest microcredit organization, was set up 5 years after Grameen. And since 1987, we have disbursed 2.3 billion ringgit Malaysia to 262,000 borrowers with a 99.2% repayment rate, the world's highest. Alhamdulillah. So it's inspired by Prof. Yunus, but it's also crucial because every time we talk about FDI, every time we talk about economic development, about investing and getting billions, don't forget the billions here and the people here also need money immediately. So AIM's holistic impact showcases, and their target was women. So they empower female heads of households. And for me, of course, it's an important microcredit story. Now, coming back to the issue of the story from Dhaka to Kuala Lumpur, I then want to move on to share some of Malaysia's own experiences. I was surprised because some of the professors here were very well versed with the Reformasi movement. And you know, it's really interesting When it first was ignited in 1998, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim's persecution transformed streets into classrooms of resistance. And we took over an existing political party, a multiracial party at the time, by 1999, since the regime blocked the creation of new political parties on ideals mirroring your own July Revolution, free speech, institutional checks, electrical integrity, and economic justice for all. And as you can see, if some of you follow the Malaysian news online, the opposition just held a demonstration. Most of them still wrangling with corruption charges, but much space was accorded without the water cannon for free speech. So in my lifetime at least, I saw a reversal from the earlier Mahathirist years of demonstrating to today. And it's important not for the political parties, it's important for Malaysians. And are all reforms done? Certainly not, because every generation will have to continue the struggle, and that is how life is led. We must appreciate history, we live in the present, and we remain fully committed, inshallah, towards building a better future. So 2 decades of endurance through detentions and defeats, because we lost many elections. I personally lost the 22 general elections. And then we came together in a federal coalition of political parties. But it also eventually culminated with the 2018 democratic transition. So for every revolution, you cannot expect one single moment defining history to be enough. It's horrible, but it is and it will take a series of sacrifices, like-minded support, including the ability to harness existing strengths. So what do I mean with this? I mean coalition building with people you don't like. So I'm not talking about Bangladesh, I'm not touching your political arena, I'm talking about what we did in Malaysia. And we had, of course, a recent political turbulence, 3 prime ministers in 5 years, but it offers critical lessons. Because in the 2018 general elections, you saw leaders who collectively spent more than a decade imprisoned by their chosen de facto leader make that decision. Make that decision to prioritize nation over what was done to me. The torture, the oppression, the injustice. And of course people will say, well, you still had to go through a series of betrayals. But then, it helps you understand, once you overcome your ego for personal power, benefit, what have you, and you start practicing in your mind, in your deed, in your actions, the country means more. The country is more important. The general public and the masses, they don't have time for your personal issues. Then you get a healthier ecosystem, a healthier environment to ensure the best talents. And meritocracy alone is not enough. You must also have a means-tested program so that the most vulnerable, perhaps those stuck in lower income areas, not everyone will have access to the best universities, am I right? Some people would have parents in prison. Some people would have difficulty after intergenerational trauma. You must ensure there are sufficient robust safety nets to lift not just those who have access to the best that the world can offer, but those who need to at least have equal opportunity in doing so. Questions? I mean, I have to thank my own reformasi journey because I grew up as a prefect, I grew up as a scout. So you see only good people, good behavior around you. And then when my father was in prison, I went to prison to visit him. But I saw more than just the visits. I saw so many people from the lower income group. They didn't have enough money to pay for transportation so they can visit their loved one who's in prison. They don't have enough money to even pay for legal support. So that's why prison reform became one of the priorities when I was members of parliament. Because it's not just about you, it's about your experiences and how you can try to tweak and improve the experiences of many others who remain voiceless. Now the next question I want to ask all of you, as much as you want rights, freedom of speech, electoral sovereignty, I think we can't lose sight of economic sovereignty. Because you also want to make sure whatever successes in terms of this new convivencia, this new ecosystem where political parties, where student movements, where activism can live side by side, succeed and is sustainable, is through economic sovereignty. Now, the question of how do we ensure our pension fund for Malaysia is the Employees Provident Fund. They are huge, they cover up to 60% of the workforce and they provide for better days to come once you retire. So they then also help buy government debt to lessen high degree and percentage of foreign debt. And they remain Malaysia's most trusted institution to date. So the concern now is every single time we have engagements with them, how do you tackle the 40% in the informal sector? People talk about the gig economy. Inshallah, Malaysia by next month will introduce a new law governing the gig workers. Why is it important? When you're doing your work, if you meet with an accident, are you protected? What happens to your right? Not just plantations. You secure revenue from natural resources as well as planters' whole equipment. So I'm just saying to all of you, today, as you celebrate, the hard work remains. Because even if you speak about your petroleum resources, how do you make sure that it's downstream development capability? We've had experience, of course, with Petronas, and the issue is they should be harnessed. This is belonging to the people of Bangladesh, and you don't want, because you don't have the time to develop, you are at the mercy of big multinationals who sometimes or most times don't care about the plight of average Bangladeshis. So ladies and gentlemen, comrades, we move to the path forward. We honor the July Revolution sacrifices, and I hope that first we ground politics in principle, where you can serve with justice, compassion, and integrity. And it's important also, at the end of the day, to work together. I see a lot of diaspora, Bangladeshi diaspora coming, and I think it's important. It requires, they call it takes the whole village, right? But it really does. For any movement to take place, there's so many complex problems in today's world. Take your pick. Issues of working conditions, issues of economic development. Is the FDI you're getting? Is it fair and does it help local enterprises? Issues of efficiency, issues of fighting corruption. Corruption, my goodness, it's not just the politicians that fall. It's also the deep state. It's also the different layers of human beings who forget sometimes they should be human and caring, but care more about profit than sharing. And of course, as mentioned earlier, you leverage diversity. I think this is a bit more challenging in a world where everything's become an echo chamber. You just watch your social media, you only talk to the people like you. You hardly see things that you dislike. You hardly meet people who are different because that is the algorithm, again, set up by the powers that be. And this powers that be makes you question, are we really in control? And that's how regulations, control, and management of the usage of social media should take centerpiece in any government's minds. So I wanted to state that there is a rising generation across the global south building new ideas and unity against weapons to fight outdated systems. I'm asking, please let us share vision, prioritizing justice over profit, indigenous wisdom over foreign templates, and global solidarity over isolation. We must have a working industrial policy. I remember when Malaysia first came up with our own industrial policy, we were attacked by the West by not embracing the market economy enough. But everyone knows the weaknesses and failures of the market economy when it goes rampant, when it allows greed to go crazy, just during the pandemic. I don't think we want to be like that. We want to make sure that we have enough degree of safety nets to provide for our people. Bangladesh pride today becomes Nigeria's blueprint tomorrow and Malaysia's imperative next. Our fates, inshallah, always intertwined in struggle and solidarity. I hope by exchanging knowledge and standing united in pain and victory, we redefine power for the marginalized. The July Revolution ignited a beacon of change, so we must continue to champion economic dignity, uphold student-led conscience, build coalitions anchored in sincerity, not expediency or reduced expediency, having a clear-cut sense of industrial policy, protect your sovereign wealth, and always be on the lookout for political and policy risks. May justice be your compass, courage your currency, and freedom your eternal flame. Inkilab Zindabad.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing such powerful words. Can I please request Professor Saimul Bidisha, the Acting Vice Chancellor and Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of Dhaka, to hand over an honorary crest to our esteemed special guest, Nurul Islam. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we have the honor to welcome on stage our special guest, Dr. Ruth Siddiqui, Special Envoy on International Affairs to the Chief Advisor's Office, is also a visiting professor in practice at LSE Ideas, the foreign policy think tank of the London School of Economics. Can I please request Dr. Ruth Siddiqui, sir, to come and say a few words?
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I had no idea that I was going to be. I didn't have an invitation. I forced myself here because I wanted to listen to Nurul and the others, but thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Lutfi Siddiqui. I'm the Chief Advisor's Special Envoy on International Affairs, and hear me? It's exactly a year since the uprising, the revolution, the sacrifices that were made in order for us to be here today and contemplate the opportunity and the possibility of a new Bangladesh. It's still a possibility. We need to implement it amongst ourselves, all of us together. And this is the hard part. How do you execute, how do you implement, how do you deliver against the aspirations and against the full potential and the full possibilities that are opened up thanks to the sacrifices of people through the uprising. I think of the concept. We have the Queen of Reformasi here with us today, and it's a concept that we're all trying to adopt. And we were talking earlier on. I look at reforms as something we have to do at two levels. At one level, you have wholesale reforms. These are your commissions, electoral commission, parliamentary reform commission, judicial reform commission, public administration reform commission, police reform commission. All of those commissions are looking at things at a macro level, top down, and they are essential, they're necessary. They will make sure that never again will we have institutional assistance in the formation of autocrats. Never again should we have a situation where there is so much power concentrated on one individual that you have to hope and pray that that individual is not evil. So institutional design at a wholesale level is very important. And I think history will be kinder to us than perhaps we are being to ourselves at the moment when we look back and see how these reform commissions have been designed, organized, how the reports have come up, and how the consensus process is now being gone through at the moment. So that's one level, wholesale reform. But the other bit of reform that I look at every single day is what I call retail reform. These are changes in the way government functions that must be felt by the man or woman on the street, by individual citizens, on a daily basis, in the day-to-day. How long does it take for me to get a visa? What are the processes like at customs? What if I want to set up a business? What if I want to change a detail on my birth certificate? Are these processes any easier, or are they more difficult than what they were before? What about land registration? What about the server that is magically out of order when I'm trying to register my trade union? These are retail level, everyday services that we need to demand that have to be better than what they were before. You cannot have a revolution and then everyone pretend we can continue doing work day to day in exactly the same way that we were doing before, while we wait for these big reform commissions to come up with their recommendations. So retail level reforms is important. What we're trying to do is make changes every day in the way that, for example, the Chilean port functions, or the way we look at migrant workers and the way migrant workers are recruited and sent abroad and how they are dealt with and served by the embassies around the world. Because ultimately what you need is a democratic, continuous pressure for reforms. And that force needs to come from all of us as ordinary citizens. We need to get addicted to reforms. And our job in the remaining few months of the interim government is to create addiction towards reforms, for reforms, so that that power cannot be overturned by any future government as we go along. So my last point is, how can academia help? We are at a university, a foremost university, one of the most classical traditional universities in the world. How can students and academics help in that process? There is a very, almost a simple way in which I think all of us, those who are trained in analytical work, in data analysis and evidence gathering and research, can help, which is to keep the focus on the data. We need to keep on asking, what do the numbers say? Not go with impression, but exact numbers. Statistics, evidence, data, and hold government accountable based on those. We will get some of the things right, we will get some of the things wrong, and then with accountability through feedback, we try again, and we get more things right and fewer things wrong, and that is the theory of change, and that is how we move forward. So that to me is how we keep the revolution going. That's the way we should commemorate anniversaries every year.